Alright, welcome back to the NRL SuperCoach Nuff channel. I forgot what my channel's called, that's a terrible start. But we're going to look at the stock market for round 23 of the NRL season. Um, First week of the head-to-head finals, so um, between all that and a bit going on at this end, I thought we'd mix up the style a little bit with this video. And rather than going through, I guess, a whole heap of options, I've really targeted, I guess, my top five or 10 in sort of some of the wider categories of player options. So we'll get into it, and we'll start with the hookers as usual. They're the ones at the top of the team. And so these guys, I've got five options here listed, I think, in order. And number one, and I think a clear number one in this position is Harry Grant. And he showed why last weekend with a 149. And he even got hooked, not hooked, but taken off before the end of the game. You know, he plays big minutes, which is great for Supercoach in the hooking position. He has the ceiling, which he's just proven. And his average, you can see, is clearly above the next best. So, you know, I think the second hooker position, you can take a bit of a shot at a few different options. You can see they're all around the same price point. But I think you do have to have Harry Grant in as your number one hooker option. After that, as I said, there's four good options, and you know I hummed and hawed about a couple of the positions, but I end up going with Damien Cook at number two, just based mostly off pedigree. You know, we know what he's capable of when he gets the running game going. South do have a good draw, although the more that I wrote this for the notes on South players and I looked at it, probably the Knights game that's coming up isn't as good as what it would have been earlier in the season, given their form at the moment. But South are a side that can do a job on anyone, so you know we don't need to stress there. Jerry Marshall King at three, and you know he was very nearly number two when you look at the numbers, and the fact that it looks like he is back from that shoulder injury with a 95 last week. And a real point of difference. So only owned by 3%, mostly due to being unavailable the last few weeks with injury. So if you can find that extra 20,000, you know, I would almost go JMK over Cook. I think, yeah, you know, didn't pull the trigger on it, but like I said, I was very close to putting him down at number two. Number four, I've got Api Coruscant from the Tigers. 120 on the weekend, and with Luke Brooks back and Brandon Wakeham making way in the team, it looks like he's picked up the goal kicking duties, which is pretty interesting. The last time we had a goal kicking hooker, it went pretty well for us in Supercoach. So the great man Cameron Smith. So you know this is the week to get on. I think you know at 515k at a negative break even, he's going to shoot up in price. Um, the Tigers are, you know, an attacking team. They may just lack a bit of quality to execute that sometimes, but Tim Sheens, Benji Marshall, you know, they want their teams out there scoring points. And if the Tigers are scoring points, you know, Appy is usually involved somewhere, whether that's, you know, creating it from the dummy half or scooting out himself or obviously putting the 2 points up afterwards. And with number five, there was a few options I tossed up, but ultimately we're chasing a bit of upside in these last few weeks. So I've gone with Wade Egan. You know, the Warriors are another team that have a really nice draw going into the back end of the season. I think they've only got one more game in Australia from memory. So you know, what's that? 3, 4 games over in New Zealand. Um, yeah, and you know we know he can score a try and that sort of thing too. So even you know if Frankie Lussick is taking some minutes off of him in that rotation, he has a high PPM. So if he's getting minutes, he's getting points. Onto the front rowers, and number one, no real surprises here, but the great man Payne Haas. You know, season average of 74 sort of says it all. He's only scored one try, so we know that's all just down to pure work rate, runs, tackles, plays big minutes. Um, you know, he's sort of the set and forget option in your front row. After that, I've got Fanua Blake at number two. And he's very similar in profile to Haas. Probably clearly doesn't have the same sort of work rate, but he does score tries. He scored 6 this year, and most of those tries do come with a line break because it's him crashing over. I think there's been one or two where he's actually chased a kick through the middle and got after it. So you know, players that put themselves in those sorts of positions are the sorts of players we want in Supercoach. Um, he has got quite a high price, and it is going up given his break even. But if you're looking for a second solid option, you could absolutely go with him. At number three, I've got Joe Tarpany. So again, a big points per minute guy, and does get pretty good minutes for someone who plays in the middle. Um, so yeah, 67 on the weekend. He's averaging 66 for the year. His floor is quite high, which we like. Um, Dual position as well, which is really handy to sort of, be able to swap and flip around as you need with buys and late season injuries and all that good stuff that comes up in the next few weeks. After that, again, another bit of a toss up, and I went with Tohu. And a lot of that is based off pedigree. His form obviously hasn't been fantastic lately. Um, but he plays big minutes and he does a lot of work. His dual position as well, and because of the recent dip in form, his price is quite nice at the moment as well. So as a bit of a bargain option that can get you some solid front row points, I think Tohu is the way to go. Number five, I've got Corey Horsburgh. I had to give him a bit of a shout out. I probably haven't paid that much attention to him this year, but average of 62 suggests that he's up there with, Tarpany and Tohu. Dual position option. He's probably the most pottish option in this group with 15% ownership. Um, so, if you are looking to differentiate, I don't know if front row is the position to really do that, but he'd be the guy. And I guess I've broken the rule here with the top five because I've included Tino. He's only 1 week away. Um, So, and when you stack up his numbers, he's up there with Payne Haas in terms of attack. He's probably somewhere between Haas and Fanua Blake in his ability to crash over and score a try. But, he basically leads the Titans team around, and it has been noticed the difference since he's been missing. Um, Although I guess the Titans did do alright against the Cowboys last week, but I feel like that was maybe more the Cowboys dipped than the Tigers really, the Titans lifted up to their level. But yeah, I guess if he was playing this week, he would be number two, maybe even number one because of the dual position. I don't think I could knock Payne off number one though, to be fair, given his pedigree. But yeah, I think next week if we did the same sort of thing, Tino would be up at number two for sure. Onto the second row, and because we've got to fill 6 slots, including our bench, I've gone top 10. It seems silly to have top 5 when you need 6 second rowers in your side. But no surprises with number one, Dave Fafita, averaging 84 for this year. Um, he's an absolute attacking stat freak. Um, and, that's things like tries, line breaks, but also assists, tackle breaks, offloads. He does it all. And yeah, I saw an article somewhere was posting about the top players under 23, and I was surprised to see his name or his picture on there, pretty much front and center. And then I realised that he is actually that young and he is just that good already. It's pretty insane. So yeah, clear number one. Number two, I've got Jermaine Hopgood. He's just an absolute workhorse. But he throws in things like offloads, and he got a try on the weekend just through pure wanting it more than the opposition defense. And that's the sort of player you want in Supercoach. So plays big minutes in the middle. It ticks all the boxes. So yeah, if you haven't got him, get him in. Number three, I've gone with Isaiah Yeo. So I guess another sort of similar player to Hopgood, and that plays big minutes, big work rate. Probably doesn't do the flashy stuff like the offloads and the tries, but out of all of these options, he's he plays almost 80 minutes in the middle every week. So with that, there's always going to be tackles. He doesn't shirk the work when he's running the ball. but then also close to the line, he can put on a try and that sort of thing as well. So I've got him just above Britton Nikora. So I guess Nikora I've got as the best option if we're looking at those edge back rowers. Um, and it comes down to obviously he can score a try. Cronulla's very good. He runs off the hip of one of the better sort of attacking players in our game in Nico Hines, which is helpful. But when I looked at his stats, he does the work in terms of things like tackles and stuff as well. I was actually surprised how high his tackle count was for an edge back rower. So um, I guess that probably goes some way to explain why the Sharks have been pretty good on their right edge, but maybe not so much on their left edge. Number 5, I've got Cam Murray. So I guess a bit of a value option if you're going by price, which is usually a common theme a lot of these guys in the top tiers have. Um, Obviously, there's value there. He was injured at the start of the year playing through that, but he seems to be out the other side of it now. 3 round average of 80 for under 600k, playing a similar sort of role to an Isaiah Yeo. You save yourself, what's that, 85k. So I think it is a good option if you are looking to bring someone in to look at Cam Murray. After that, I've gone with Kaloa Matangi, and this is mostly based on the value. So you can see he's only 540k, but he does have that attacking upside. He's very damaging on that edge. Obviously not as damaging as a Dave Fafita. You could argue he's on par with Olaquatu underneath him, and even Scott Sorensen underneath that. But the value, I think, is what just had him slightly higher in the rankings. So, cool. I guess, I've said about Olaquatu, he has that upside. He knows how to score a try. Again, running off of a good halfback like Cherry Evans, he'll put you in the right spot more often than not. So, yeah, those guys are very similar, but again, the value just got me up over Kyle Matangi. And then someone I probably haven't given that much credit to this season, but Scott Sorensen. When you take out his first few games where he came off the bench, that season average of 68 is probably actually a bit higher. So it probably has masked the fact that he has been so good since locking down that spot on the left edge of Penrith, so PLE, Penrith left edge. It's a pretty good spot to be. You've got the likes of Luai who can create outside. Obviously, Nathan Cleary attracts a lot of attention. So it does free up those edges, and particularly the left edge for Penrith seems to, always do pretty well. So he's taken over from Viliami Kikau there, essentially. And he does have good work rate too. He's proven that when he has played more through the middle. Um, so yeah, having a player like that is a nice option, I think, and probably haven't given him enough credit through the year. So well done to you, Scotty, as the train goes past. Pat Carrigan, so I guess the pure base beast, although he's finally found the try line. So bumped his score all the way up to a 97 with the try and the line break and the tackle breaks that are associated with that. But the 65 is usually just down to pure work rate. So you know, probably one of the better floors in terms of second rowers. But I guess it's that upside which drops him down a few spots on this list. And Ryan Madison, I've got in at number 10. He has the ability to play with the ball, so try assists, offloads. Probably the thing that holds him back is the fact he is coming off the bench, so his minutes are limited to about 60, but he certainly makes those 60 minutes count. And he has done it in the past, so we can have some trust in his ability to score points for us. Onto the halfbacks, and with this one, I've got it down to 4 options instead of 5. And that's purely because I think, um, yeah, I think I'm being generous with including the 4th one in there, if I'm being honest. Nathan Cleary, I've got the GOAT there. It might be a bit of an over-exaggeration, but he's just such a good SuperCoach player, such a good NRL player too. He does everything we want from a halfback. He puts on tries, but he runs the ball, he kicks the goals well. Um, yeah, so defends well. So, all of those things put together is why he's always one of the most popular players. And he's been the most popular trade in the last couple of weeks, and rightly so. After that, go on Sean Johnson. Might seem a little bit controversial, but I guess just given that we're only looking at the next 5 weeks, the Warriors draw is very good. Um, and averaging 77, 3 round average of 95. So, he's in form, and he does offer a little bit more value as well. So we are considering that, but it's not the biggest influence, obviously, because at this stage we're really just targeting those keepers for the last few weeks. So with that, obviously I've got Nico Hines down to number 3, which given his average of 94 seems a bit harsh, but the Sharks are just a bit down on their form. So, until you see signs of that turning around, I think Cleary and SJ are the top 2 options. Um, but, I did put faith in him last week, and he let me down a bit with the captaincy. But, that's the first time this season he really has. So, yeah, it's just one of those things where at this very point in time he's third on the list, and I think rightfully the most traded out this week. The Sharks run isn't that great going into the NRL finals either, so yeah, it might be a good time to cut your losses there if you have held him the last couple of weeks. And Mitchell Moses, as I said, it is a point of difference move given, I think the other 3 are clearly better options. Para's draw's not the best the next few weeks. There's a couple of toughies. They also have the bye in the last round, but I mean, if you're playing head to head, that's not an issue. Most of the head to head seasons will be over by then. But he fits the profile, a goal kicking halfback who's heavily involved in his team's attack. But he's probably just that slight step down from the other 3. Onto the 5'8" position, and I think a clear number 1 here, despite him not actually playing in the 5'8" position, but Kalen Ponga is available there, but he's been killing it at fullback. 3 round average of 118. I think his 5 round average is about the same. And I think if you calculate his average since he's moved back to fullback, it's still up around there. So I think he's a must-have. I haven't said that with any other player, maybe Harry Grant, to be fair. But when you look at those numbers, he's just head and shoulders above the rest. So find a way to make $1 million and get him in your side. Munster, I got his number 2, and I think this just came down to break even plus after this week. Obviously they got the Panthers this week, which is a tough ask. But after that, Storm's draw is pretty nice. So, I think he'll make his break even this week, and then he could just kick on from there. So I've got him above Cody Walker. Now the Troll's back. Nice draw for South. I think Cody will start to expand and could go on a run towards the end of the season. So, if you want to go a bit different or you can't afford Ponga, Munster and Cody Walker isn't the worst combo going around. At number 4, I've got Dylan Brown. So he is back this week, which makes him, a really interesting point of difference. He's only 3% owned. I'm not sure who held on to him for that long. Obviously, players that aren't really playing anymore. But, the numbers stack up. The price is maybe the one sort of sticking point. I mean, you're halfway between Cody Walker and Kalen Ponga there. But if you're looking for somewhere different, I think, that could be one way to differentiate yourself. And then after that, I could have gone with just the 4 options again. But I'll shout out my man, Matt Burton. His dual position, which again, because it's halfback, probably isn't the biggest issue in the world. But he is the main man in the side. So I guess, all these players that we're mentioning, they do have that feature in common, with maybe the exception of Brown and Moses. Obviously, I've mentioned both of them from the same club. But outside of those 2, the half. I think the headset just cut out there. It's one of the reasons why I don't like using it for this long video. But yeah, Burton is the main man at the Dogs. Any sort of attacking stuff, it's more likely to go through him than anyone else. So a real point of difference. He's the pot I'm sticking with for the rest of the season. And hopefully it comes off for me. Onto the centre wingers. And so I guess the player that would have been at the top of the list possibly is actually off. Val Holmes. So at the moment, he's looking down the barrel of potentially 4 games suspended, which, including the bye week, means he's not available for the rest of the regular season, which for SuperCoach is no good. The Cowboys are going to appeal the decision, and at the time of recording, this is Tuesday afternoon, so the teams aren't even named. I might be naming players that aren't named. So if you're looking at this going, why is he talking about this player who's not playing? That's why. It's like I said, a busy week. Um, so if you've got him, I think he's a sell. So our new number one on the centre wing list is Ruben Garrick. Um, yeah, I'm not even really sold on the centre wing order, if I'm being honest. I think the 10 players are right, but the order's probably not right. So if you think I've got it wrong, tell me which order it should be in. Um, I would like to know what everyone thinks. But yeah, goal kicking fullback, we love them. Manly's a relatively attacking side, and Ruben Garrett can get in amongst all of that. So gave him the number one because he's got the most avenues to scoring points. Number two, I went with Greg Marzu just because, season average of 79. He just keeps doing it. He bust tackles. He's on the Newcastle Knights left edge, so KNLE, like Penrith's left edge. It's a pretty good edge to be on outside of Kalen Ponga, so finishing off all his work. Charles Nickel Clockstad at number three. Um, yeah, he's just here just through sheer work rate. He just gets in amongst everything. He's playing fullback, which helps too, but obviously, he's always tailing the play, looking for offloads and those sorts of things. Gets involved in backline movements all the time. So, and again, we've talked about the Warriors' good draw, so he's one that's definitely worth having for the run home. Brian Toto, I've put up at number four. He since Origin and Cleary's back, he's put on some tries, but the work rate's always there. He busts tackles. He's always been that sort of safe option in the centre wing. But I think it's more than ever he's the one to target going into this run home. Jermaine Osaka, I've got a number five, and I think this is maybe more respect to what he's done earlier in the season, and hoping he can replicate that again. I think realistically he might slide down the list a bit, but yeah, I think, like I said, just based on what he's done and what he's shown he can do, I've got him there. He kicks goals, which is a nice bonus as well. Fortunately for me, he didn't kick all the goals last week against the Dogs, uh, but we'll tip him to bounce back. Campbell Graham, a bit flat last week with a 34, but they've got that good draw. They've got the Sharks this week. Sketchy left edge defence. He's going to be running at them. He could go big this week. So um, I've got him up in number six. Again, not one I've focused too hard on this year, but he did have that massive run at the start of the year. Who's to say he can't do it again? Jacob Carraz at number seven. So I guess the Brian Tyler light. If you haven't got 677k, you only need to find 550 to get him involved. It's the same sort of thing. He loves an offload as well. Probably just doesn't quite get as many tries, particularly now that he's sort of in the centres. He's shipping it off to I think Addo Carr was playing outside of him last week. So yeah, I didn't see a lot of the game, so I'm not exactly sure. But yeah, I think on the wing I prefer him. He gets a bit more upside of tries, but he still does the business in the centres. Speaking of centres that do the business, I've got Joey Manu at number 8, so another, I guess, disappointing effort from a right centre. But we know what his ceiling is, and that alone means you've got to sort of consider him in your squad, because he's a player that can win you these head-to-head games as a point of difference. And then number 9 and 10, I was scratching around a little bit, so I looked for a couple of players that were in form, and stumbled across Bradman Best and Dallin Watene-Zelezniak. So both with 3-round averages of 80, both playing outside some pretty in-form halves in Kalen Ponga and Sean Johnson. So, if you are looking for a point of difference, I would steer you guys in that direction. And then finally, the fullbacks. And again, another difficult one to rank, but I've gone with Latrell at number one. He kicks goals, which is a bonus on the other four on this list. There's a few that are capable of doing it, and Drinkwater may actually get the job if Holmes is out. Um, he's back, he's fit. They kept him off a bit longer to make sure he could get through the 80 minutes, and he looked like he got through no issues on the weekend. And he has the attacking upside. We all know what Latrell's about. So for that reason, I'd be scared not to have him. Um, yeah, so that's why I got him in last week. Second, I've got Reece Walsh, and I think it's the value pick. Is why he's above the others. He has the attacking upside. All these guys have attacking upside. That's why we go with two gun fullbacks. But just the value, I think, pushes him up the list a bit further. After that, I've gone with Teddy third, which based on form you might think is a bit of a head scratcher. But the thing that sort of swung it for me is the fact that he doesn't have a bye for the rest of the year. All the other gun fullbacks all have 1 week off before the end of the season, which is a weird sort of anomaly of the draw. So yeah, so if you're looking for someone that will play every week in your head-to-head finals, you don't have to use trades on. Teddy's the guy, and we know what he's capable of. He had an off week last week, but the week before that he was excellent. So swings and roundabouts. Go with Teddy. Drinkwater, I've got above Gutho. Just I think his ball playing is a bit of an advantage. Gutho can ball play and all that sort of thing, but I think Drinkwater, that's what he's grown up playing. A bit of 5'8", bit of halfback, fullback. He fits in all those sort of spots if you need him to. But he's found his home there at fullback, and he's carving up for the Cowboys. And he's also the bigger point of difference too at only 8.6%. Obviously, that's because he's over $1 million to buy, so he's locked a few people out with his price point. But if I had to pick between the two, I'd try and find the money to go Drinkwater. And as we said, Gutho's top five still. That's fine. He's still involved in everything. It really is the Gutherson, Moses, Dylan Brown show at Parramatta. Um, they get involved in everything, and then it's just to what degree it comes off. It is a bit inconsistent, a bit of a roller coaster with them, which also pushes them down the rankings a bit. So just I guess to summarise, a bit of a buy, keep, sell, avoid, and I guess I tried to go off the most popular trades as of Tuesday afternoon. This could change after team list, so it is what it is. But Cam Murray I've got is probably the best buy out of the options we've talked about. Yeah, I just like his value, his upside. And second row there seems to be, a few value picks. And in the back line, Brian Tyler, I think, he's just got that base, but the ceiling or the upside is starting to show through. A couple of people were selling the likes of Joey Manu. Dylan Edwards was another one that came up on the most popular sell list, and I know he wasn't in my top five, but he probably is number 6 on the list. Fullback that plays for Penrith, it's not the worst place to be. So um, yeah, I was really struggling for a couple of keeps. There was quite a few obvious sells I think on that list. So they're my shouts there. Val Holmes I think is an obvious sell unless he gets off, in which case he is a keep. Um, and then Nico Hines, I think you got to sell him, until that value sort of comes back. And a couple of people were trading in, or a lot of people trading in Alex Johnston. All right, obviously, he scored a lot of tries against the Tigers. Who doesn't? you know, um, and yeah, also the Sharks are sort of vulnerable down the opposite edge to him. So you'd predict maybe Campbell Graham's going to have a big one rather than Alex Johnston this week. And Dan Gagai, yeah, I can see the sort of reasoning. He's been a solid contributor all season. But I mean, if you're going to go with a Newcastle centre, I'd rather go Bradman Best, who's playing outside of Kalen Ponga, who's probably the form player of the competition. So that's the stock market video. I've got to get going. I keep looking at the time, you might notice. But yeah, like I said, some of those player orders I wasn't convinced on, particularly centre wing and fullback. So let me know in the comments what you think. If you have suggestions for improvement, or if you have any questions, as always, I love answering the questions. If you enjoy the content, and I guess particularly this slightly different format, give us a like. Subscribe to the channel, pushing up towards 90 subscribers now, I think, which is hectic. Every time I say a number, people just get on there and subscribe to push towards it. So I should just start making up ridiculously big numbers. But seriously, thanks to everyone for that. And other than that, I'll catch you in the next one.